Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With another WWE edition of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, this time for our second WWE episode of the week, as we are here to not only provide you with ultimate previews for WWE Evolution and NXT Great American Bash, but offer a retrospective at the inaugural WWE Revolution back in 2018. Vintage Chris Vanini will be along momentarily for significant portions of today's show, but off the top, I would be remiss if I did not remind you how important it is to remember that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So please, folks,
stop being marks for yourselves and go back to being a mark for me.
Go back to being marks for the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, Vintage Chris Vanini, and Getting Over as a whole. Visit Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave some 5-star ratings on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And we truly hope you go ahead and do that, because we have an absolutely loaded week for you right here on Getting Over. As mentioned, this is already our second WWE episode in as many days. Our first came out Tuesday. It was, of course, a WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Ultimate Preview plus a breakdown of the entire week of WWE television. Of course, this covering Evolution, NXT Great American Bash, NXT, the entire episode from Tuesday night, along with that Evolution retrospective. Our third episode will be coming up on Thursday, an AEW All-In Texas Ultimate Preview, and then we take just 24 hours off, allows the Silver King to rest his vocal cords before we come back with 3 episodes in 2 days, all of them instant analysis. Earlier Saturday evening, AEW All-In, later Saturday night, Saturday Night's Main Event, and Great American Bash, and then on Sunday, Evolution. 6 episodes in 6 days, all of it performance-enhancing audio for your ear holes. That's the way we do it right here at Getting Over. Of course, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, Pocket Casts, wherever you listen, but you can also subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only do you get the full-length audio episodes, you also get full-length video interviews. All of that on YouTube at Getting Overcast. We truly hope you subscribe. It is also important for you to remember that here at Getting Over, we want you to follow us on social media. So hit us up at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You'll get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show that we will frequently read on the air at worst or respond to on social media. And you can vote in pre- and post-show polls around those 4 events I just mentioned, all transpiring this weekend, July 12th and 13th. So again, at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Now, the order of operations for today's show is going to go as follows, and there will be timestamps in the episode description if you choose to jump around. Of course, we always hope you listen to the entire show. We're going to kick things off with the WWE Evolution retrospective, a full look back at 2018 and then why they've done the show again here in 2025. Next will be your WWE Evolution Ultimate Preview. Then we'll discuss the week of NXT television, and we'll main event today's show with your NXT Great American Bash Ultimate Preview. Silver King will be going at it alone when it comes to NXT, but Vintage will be with us for the entire first half of the show. So let's not waste any more time getting to that. As promised, welcoming in Vintage Chris Vanini, who is extremely busy right now at the Big 12 Media Days 2-day event in Texas. He is here for the first of 3 segments on today's show, the WWE Evolution retrospective, taking a full look back at the inaugural edition of this premium live event in 2018. And Chris, the way I think it makes the most sense to start this off is by recalling back to the circumstances during which Evolution was aired the first time. This event took place in October 2018, the end of October 2018, just days before WWE held its second Blood Money in the Sand show when they returned to Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel. The first one, of course, was the Greatest Royal Rumble. No women were on that show. No women were on Crown Jewel 2018 either. And the fact of the matter is that the first Evolution was a PR move. They did it because they felt they had to, because they were getting so much backlash from fans and media about not only operating a show in Saudi Arabia, especially given the circumstances of what was happening at that time, but completely leaving women off despite trying to kind of say that they were there to, quote unquote, help make progress, in the region. So it was very much a public relations move then. Now, in 2025, WWE is doing Evolution. Forget about when it is airing, but they're holding the show because they want to, and they believe there's an audience to do it. Otherwise, they just would not. And that on its own is immensely admirable. But if you compare the two, apples to apples, the build for Evolution in 2018, it was stronger, it was more deliberate, and I don't necessarily believe that's a failure by WWE in 2025 because they care less about the women's show. Saturday night's main event, as I discussed on the last episode, it has seen an equally poor build to Evolution, maybe even worse. Rather, this is a symptom of the largest issue we've been discussing for months now, WWE shoving far, far too many special events into an extremely short period of time. Now, all that said, women are featured on WWE TV far more in 2025 than they were even 7 years ago. So from the inaugural Evolution to this second showing, there's no question the division as a whole has been elevated. Progress continues to be made. But when you look back on the circumstances surrounding that first show's existence, there's no question that it felt like there was far greater effort put into it from a creative standpoint, almost because there needed to be, compared to what we're getting now 7 years later.
Right. And frankly, I think that's maybe better that the creative this year isn't as good, because there is so much women's wrestling going on elsewhere. Frankly, with this Evolution, my reaction is, why? Like, it doesn't feel like, and I mean that again in a good way, where it's like, we see most of these women wrestling on every episode of Raw and SmackDown in the pay-per-views anyway. Like, it's not like there's anything unique or new that's going to be shown here. They're regularly main eventing Raw and SmackDown that we don't even notice. Like, they still talk about Trish Leader main eventing Raw for the first time like it was a big deal. And as cliche as it is to say, and, as we went back and watched Evolution, they keep saying, the hope is we get to a point where we don't have to talk about being the first this and this and this. And frankly, they are there now. And the only real things that haven't happened are night 2 main event of WrestleMania at this point. Like, I don't even know what there really is left.
Technically true, but they did main event WrestleMania 31, which was one night. So, I mean, they've already kind of accomplished that,
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So I'm glad this is happening, I guess. I just don't feel like it's necessary, because to WWE's credit, especially since Triple H took over creative, like, the women are booked just as good or just as poorly as the men. And it's gotten to a point where I do not notice the difference.
Right. Like, that's really kind of what I'm getting at. People are saying, the Evolution build is leaving so much to be desired. That is true. But so is the build for all the men's matches on Saturday night's main event, which is on network television on NBC. So it's equally as poor. And if you want to talk about equality, well, you want everything to be equally as great. But in some cases, that also means it's going to be equally as poor. I understand the comment you made. Becky Lynch, by the way, said that in her book. She said, it was great that we did it, and I understand that it was important to people, but real equality is not needing that show. I don't want us to have Evolution. At the same time, if you're going to be WWE and you're going to stand up there and say, we have the best women's division in the world, which I largely agree with, especially when it comes to a company that is not an only women's wrestling company, Stardom, being a great example of that, right? When you're talking about companies that employ both men and women and feature them on shows, really, in this case, it's WWE, AEW, TNA, and certainly, you can't even say New Japan, because Stardom is still a separate company, even if New Japan does kind of have a women's title now. It's a little convoluted to get into that. But WWE still does by far the best job. I mean, it's not even really close as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
TNA features a lot of women, but the way WWE platforms their women, for me, is different. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Becky says by doing that. But if you're going to purport yourself to having the best women's division, and by the way, it is legitimately strong. Like, there's a lot of women injured and not available right now. And you're looking at this card, and we'll talk about Evolution 2025, obviously, in the next segment. And you're saying, what, this card is actually stacked when it comes to talent and the matches they are putting on and everything. And yet there's still a lot of women still not being utilized in major roles. So when you look at it from that standpoint, you're saying, okay, maybe WWE doesn't need to do this, and they don't need to show you that they take women's wrestling seriously, but it is something that they can do, that as of today that we're taping this show, July 9th, 2025, no other American or North American company can do this. Not a show on its own where they're going to sell however many tickets they sell, 7,000, 8,000 tickets, to say, we are only coming to this show to watch the women perform. And there is something praiseworthy about that WWE, I mean, it's really all corporate bullshit, right, Chris? They see a money-making opportunity in just airing a women's show, so therefore they are doing it.
It's exactly what it is. Last time it was about PR. This time it's about, we're trying to do as many wrestling shows as possible. Among those, let's run another all-women show, because that's something we think will work among the many things we're trying to do.
Yeah. And people are comparing it. They're saying fewer people are going to go to this than Saturday night's main event. Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a Sunday instead of a Saturday. It is only utilizing half of the roster, right? It's only the women's division. There's also a number of names that aren't necessarily going to be on the program. And even if they are, the build for it has not been to a level, just like we discussed, where you would say that this is an absolute must-watch, can't-miss show, because I think going in, most of us know that some of these matches are kind of happening just to happen. If WWE is going to do multiple major title changes, generally, they save those for SummerSlam and WrestleMania and so on and so forth, although, of course, Io Sky did win her title on Monday Night Raw. But regardless, when you're putting 3 shows in a 2-day span, all in one city, and you're asking people, especially, to shell out money for Saturday night's main event, featuring some notable names. Goldberg is on that show. I mean, and big time people. And then you're saying, turn around, please, and spend similar money for a show that only features the women's wrestlers. It's not going to be as appealing to the entirety of the fan base. And that's understandable. But sell, again, I don't know what I don't know what the ticket sales number is going to wind up at. But 7,000 tickets, 8,000 tickets for a show that only utilizes half of the roster and has not been built well, I mean, that's successful.
Also, who cares? Like, whether or not it's a sellout or whatever, like, it's clearly enough that it's worthy doing its own show.
Well, that'll be determined by how many more times they do it in the future. And it does become an annual show. Do they do it every other year? How do they?
It's the way WWE is trying to package these events, as they've been doing. We'll do,
right.
They've been doing NXTs and been trying to make weekends out of the Saturday night main event stuff. And so you try different things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, they'll try this and we'll see how it goes. I'll promise you, they're not going to do a WWE, I'm trying to think what it would be called, Macho Men show, where it's only the male talent.
That's what we're saying. Like, they're doing this because they think they can make more money out of it. That's the reason.
Right.
And the fact that they think it's possible is a good sign.
And I'll also note, too, I got a message on social media. I'm not going to call the person out because I know they didn't mean it in a negative way. But they're like, man, it's really shitty that, like, Maybelline is sponsoring the show. And I'm like, shitty? It's incredible. How often have you seen female corporate sponsors, female geared corporate sponsors on WWE shows? Extremely few and far between. This is an entry point. If they have success with this, maybe Maybelline sponsors the Royal Rumble one year. Like, you don't know how it's going to go. So this is a huge opportunity for them from a corporate standpoint and also from an exposure standpoint. Putting on an event like this, it does get a lot of pub in female-only publications as well, and that's hugely positive too. So, look, we're going to talk more about the build for this show in the 2025 Evolution Ultimate Preview, which is our second segment here on today's show. I just wanted to have like the circumstance conversation here at the start. And by the way, we mentioned that this happened before Crown Jewel 2018. It took an entire calendar year and another event after that for WWE to finally get a women's match on the Saudi Arabia show. That was Crown Jewel 2019, Natalya against Lacey Evans. And that almost didn't happen. They tried to do it in June that year. They flew out. I believe it was Natalya and Alexa Bliss, and they did a bunch of PR and stuff in the area, and they still didn't get on the show. So, now that the women regularly compete for the Blood Money in the Sand shows, that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why Evolution went away. They didn't need the PR work anymore. At the same time, this probably is a show that should have happened at least one other time between 2018 and 2025. Nevertheless, we're getting it now. So let's do this retrospective on 2018 Evolution. Chris, I cannot stress how wild of a watch this show was for me 7 years later. Hugger Bailey, Liv Morgan at 24 years old, looking like she was 14 out there. Toni Storm winning a notable match. Ember Moon legitimately getting arena-wide chance as one of the most popular women on the show. WWE sending her back to NXT after she recovered from her injury is so ridiculous, even if she was great down there. The show featured Trish Stratus, Lita, and Mickie James in the opening match. Ronda Rousey and Nikki Bella was the main event of the show. Of the 5, only Rousey was a full-time talent at that juncture, and she was still a special attraction, including all of the names in the Battle Royal, Chris. I did the math. 1/3 of the women on the initial Evolution were legends. 1/3 of the 6 matches booked, not including the Battle Royal this year, because we don't know who's going to be in it. Only 1 of 19 is a legend. That speaks to the incredible depth of the division and how over the current women have become. The WWE did not need to reach back to the past for that many special attractions just to sell the show as something fans should be watching. So put that in context, Chris. They're going to sell a similar amount of tickets this year and 7 years ago. 7 years ago, 1/3 of the show was legends. This year, of the matches booked, 1 of 19 women is a legend.
Not to mention, of those 2/3 who were not legends, a lot of them aren't around anymore.
Right.
Ronda Rousey, Nikki Bella, Toni Storm, Sasha Banks.
The Iconics.
The Iconics. There's still been a lot of turnover even from that. And that goes to show you just how deep the women's division is now.
Yeah, it's really night and day watching the two shows. I mean, the second one hasn't even happened yet, but seeing the two cards, one against the other. Renee Young back then and Beth Phoenix were both on commentary. And I sat around, I was like, they can't do an all-male commentary booth this year. I wonder who, if anyone, will do it. Phoenix, I don't believe she has a contract with WWE in any capacity right now, but she would be great with Wade Barrett and Vic Joseph. That really should be the trio for this show. I don't know that it's going to be. I could see Corey Graves on the call, but there's got to be a woman on this broadcast. Is there anyone who sticks out to you right now that you think absolutely needs to be that person?
I don't know who it would be other than Beth Phoenix for the reason that you said. I mean, I don't know if Jackie Redmond or the other backstage interviewer are just have that ability to do play-by-play. It's really hard. I don't think it's the end of the world if they don't. I will say, I didn't think the commentary on the first Evolution was very good.
It wasn't. Yeah.
So there's that too.
It didn't hold up. And, she knows this. She was one of the first interviews we did on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We spoke to Renee about doing play-by-play. It's just not what she's good at. She kind of brought the commentary part of the broadcast down. Again, not in any hugely negative way, but it wasn't as smooth as it otherwise could have been. Kathy Kelly, of course, is the other person you were thinking of in that role. And I agree. I don't think Jackie or Kathy is really going to step up and do commentary in that way. And even thinking back to some in NXT, there's Sarah Schreiber and Kelly Kincaid. I don't think either of them are fit for that role either. So I wonder almost if it's going to be a situation where there's a 2-man commentary team. Let's say it's just Wade and Vic, just for shits and giggles. And then a different woman who's not involved in the show guests on commentary during some of the matches. I don't even know. You bring down Alundra Blaze for one. You bring down, Lita for one, whatever the case might be. What do you think about that?
Maybe I could see that happening. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do, but the presentation was so different in 2018 that I think it's going to be different this year.
Yeah, this is, I have a feeling, going to feel like a full-fledged PLE that year. It was definitely one of the, I don't want to say dumbed down, but the lesser sets. They just used a screen, which now is commonplace, but it was not then. So I don't think they're going to cheap out in any way on this Evolution.
And they darkened out the whole crowd. You couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
I didn't love the presentation. The hard cam was not very good. I'm very curious they'll have the full WWE production with them this time around. And like, I imagine they're going to run it like they run every other show. That last Evolution felt different in that sense. They made it feel like a different WWE show, but looking back, it feels very pared down.
I am curious what the setup's going to look like, because Saturday night's main event, they like to do the metal guardrails and all that, and like the classic kind of look. Are they just going to keep that, or are they going to rebuild the set in 24 hours?
Yeah.
It'll be really curious to see if they make any adjustments. There was a sign in the crowd I saw throughout the entire broadcast, Chris. We want women's tag team titles. Oh, sweet summer child. If you only knew what was going to come over the next 7 years with those straps. There's a musical performance to start after Rhea Ripley had an NXT UK women's title bout as a dark match. That, by the way, went 4 minutes, Ripley's match. And again, wasn't even on the main card. So again, we're talking about differences 7 years later. 7-match main card, including a battle royal. Let's go match by match. We're not going to break down the things that happen in the match. We're just going to discuss, of course, how we felt about them as we were watching. Trisha and Lita beat Mickey and Alicia Fox in an 11-minute opening match. It was a C+, 2.75 stars. My main takeaway from this was that we probably do need to get Trish and Mickey one-on-one one last time at some point before Mickey James retires. There's no reason, given the TNA relationship and everything, that cannot happen in WWE.
It's a good way to put it. I had no memory of Alicia Fox and Mickey James being a tag team, which I guess they kind of were at the time. It's always interesting jumping back into the creative of it all. Zero memory of that being a thing.
I'm wanting to make sure this is the right match, but was this the one where Alexa Bliss was out there?
I don't have that in my notes, so I'm not sure.
Because
that does sound right. That does sound right, though, yeah.
Because there were injuries that changed a couple matches on this show. Not that dissimilar from Liv Morgan getting hurt, and therefore this year's Evolution getting flipped as well. But Alexa getting hurt, I remember, was a big reason why the Evolution card did not go exactly as planned. Nia Jax won a 20-woman battle royal for a number 1 contendership. They're, of course, doing that match again, but it featured Asuka. Imagine relegating Asuka to this match 7 years ago in her prime. Now, I say that, and she may well be in the match again 7 years later, but this was 7 years ago in her prime. Asuka, Naomi, Alundra Blaze, Ivory, Kelly, Michelle McCool, Molly Holly, Tori Wilson were legends in there. I'm glad this is happening again this year, because it got a large swath of women involved in the show, and they probably would not have been otherwise. The Iconics were amazing, and this reminded me how badly Andrade needs to go back to his original music, because Zelina Vega came out to it here, and that track hits so damn hard. It actually makes you pay attention. Ember Moon, now Athena, over in AEW and Ring of Honor, she was legitimately over and booked to eliminate Asuka. Releasing her never made a shred of sense. I said it at the time it happened. Had the entire arena chanting for her multiple times during this match for Ember Moon. Meanwhile, she gets sent back to NXT 2 years later. Not an incredible battle royal wrestling-wise. It was perfect for the fans, though. They were crazy hyped the entire time. Nia being a babyface, it was a little bit weird to see. But Chris, this was after the WrestleMania 34 feud against Alexa, so that's why she was getting cheered and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense, because Nia's such a good heel, and she's been a heel for so long. It is hard to remember what it was like when she was being a face. That makes sense. Another big takeaway from this entire show is just how much better the music was back then.
So much better.
Like even the stuff that wasn't good, like Lana's like saxophone theme.
You knew it was her.
That was better than a lot of.
Right.
Yeah, you knew it was her. Well, like later on, like Shayna Baszler's music later on, like so much music was better. And you talk about Asuka and various things. The Iconics were incredible, man, back at that time. I don't remember exactly how or why. I don't know if they both got released. I know one of them, or maybe both of them, have since had a kid with Shawn Spears. I don't know if they're
I don't think they both had a kid with Shawn Spears.
Wrestling anymore? No, I meant one of them did. I don't know if they both had kids or not, but they were an unbelievable duo. And even back then, like they had the crowd in the palm of their hand with everything they said. That's a heck of a group. I don't know if they're really around wrestling anymore, but they were great, man.
So their wrestling,
should have got more out of them.
Their wrestling is the inspiration in TNA. They took some time off because they both, I think, had 2 kids. So they were wrestling together, then off for a while because one or both of them were pregnant. But Peyton Royce is the one who
with Sean Spears,
married to Sean Spears. Yes, correct. Not Billy Kay or whatever her name is now. I'm not sure what she's going by in 2025. But yes, so they are still wrestling. You know what, man? Because of the TNA relationship, I could see them in this battle royal.
Bring them back.
Be a huge pop if they did show up. People love them. And of course, just when we mention the Iconics, we need you to remember something special about this show.
Here. Yeah, we've been eliminated. We just studied that question. Hey, you got a journalism for that? You got to be joking me. Because out there, that was the real joke. That was the real joke.
We did go to journalism for this, by the way, just so everyone is aware. Toni Storm beat Io Shirai in the Mae Young Classic final. This completely under-delivered to expectation, which was a familiar feeling watching it back. It only went 10 minutes, which on one hand made sense because neither were main roster wrestlers at the time, but it was also far too short just given their talent level. What they could have done, given 20, 25 minutes, would have been incredible. It is crazy how much Io has matured over the last 7 years. Her current presentation is way better than it was back then. Same, obviously, with the presentation of Storm. But what was kind of interesting, Toni has slowed down a lot, despite only being 29 years old right now. Pretty surprising. 3.75 stars, B+. This was the ceiling for it, given the allotted time. In retrospect, it was the most disappointing match on the show for the reasons where it didn't get a lot of time. And looking back on it, you had Toni and Io in a crazy match. You really wanted it to completely deliver, and it did not.
But also look to where they are now. Io is the champion coming into and out of WrestleMania, and Toni Storm's got a women's championship match at a stadium show, at All In this
going
weekend.
Into All In, most popular woman in that company. Io, one of the most over women in WWE. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, again, those early days NXT women's classes, even the current ones are still too, but they produced a lot of superstars from NXT early on.
They did, and I know you don't mean it this way. I'm just clarifying for others. Chris is not saying those two were produced by NXT. Toni obviously had a career in Australia, Io a groundbreaking career in Japan, but they, of course, both did go through NXT, to his point. Bayley and Sasha Banks, alongside Natalya, beat the Riot Squad in a 6-woman match. It's a lot of fun. I really had nothing else to say about it. 3.5 stars and a B.
It was good. Again, Sasha, she was already a star by then at this point. But she continues to be as well. And I always wonder if Bayley's ever going to go back to the hugger gimmick. At some point, at some match, she's got to bring it back, right? Every legend does a vintage entrance. I always wonder if Bayley will.
Maybe she does
that's another thing.
Maybe she does the inverse Cena, she gets knocked on the head or something and becomes Hugger Bayley again.
Maybe, I don't know, but that's another thing. Even that music, much better than what she has now.
Oh, God. Well, her music is the worst on the entire main roster. I mean, so anything would be better than that. Shayna Baszler beat Kairi Sane for the NXT Championship. I completely forgot about this match. Absolute banger. Shame that Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke got involved in the finish, because the first 12 minutes of this, they were a great clash of styles, concluding what was a pretty epic NXT feud. Kairi, she was incredible selling the knockout. 3.75 stars, B+ again, due to the finish. But if this was clean, if Duke and Shafir did not get involved, it probably would have been an A-.
Another example of two wrestlers who had way better music back in the day. This was a great theme for Shayna, the rock music, and that was Kairi's classic pirate theme that they kind of remixed recently.
Yeah.
But this was good match. Even Shayna in the vignette, this was kind of around that time, I think, where we thought Shayna might go to that next level. Because remember, she's in a championship match at the following WrestleMania in the Performance Center. So this ended up being the pinnacle for Shayna this period of time.
Pretty much. I mean, she did have that opportunity in the Elimination Chamber in WWE from a booking standpoint, but she was never over. Not like she was in NXT, not like she was on this show. Becky Lynch beat Charlotte Flair in a last woman standing match. What stood out to me here is that Charlotte was a much better wrestler 7 years ago, and Becky is a much better wrestler in 2025. Flair was so freaking motivated in this match. She took one major bump after another major bump. The figure 8 with the ladder was top tier. Was it a convoluted setup? Yeah, but it looked great. Lynch was so popular. She worked heel all match, yet got cheered the entire time. And I recalled the ridiculousness of Flair powering out of a pile of rubble in 3 seconds, but She took a hell of a power bomb off the ropes through a table ringside, and the final 10 count of Charlotte trying but failing to get up, kind of like she was a baby giraffe trying to walk for the first time. It was one of my favorite endings to a last woman standing match or last person standing match that I've ever seen. 5 stars, A+. It should have main evented the show, as we all know when the card was booked. They beat the absolute shit out of each other here. And when I list my favorite, the best WWE women's matches of all time, I forget about this far more often than I should. This is definitely up there.
Definitely. This was such an interesting moment in time, because this is when they turned Becky heel, but people were behind her.
Mm-hmm.
But the company hadn't really gotten behind Becky doing it as a face yet, because in the vignette they have Edge doing the sit down with Becky, and Edge says, I've seen this before. It's not going to end well for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it ended up with Becky main eventing WrestleMania.
That was such a failure. They brought him out to get heel heat on Becky, and they booed Edge instead, the fans.
Yeah, because people like Becky Lynch, and the company finally realized that. Great match. Really, the only down part of this match is when Charlotte does the moonsault onto Becky through the table. But because Charlotte always does moonsaults where she lands on her feet,
right,
she totally missed.
Right.
She lands on her feet and then tries to stomach onto Becky. It doesn't work. They do a new spot with the table. It's always surprised me. She's never done a moonsault land on her stomach. She's just never done it. And that was the only down part of that match. But Becky gets the win. People loved her. It's, again, wild. Becky as a heel, Charlotte as a face, and the company thinking that's the way to go. Interesting.
This was 6 months, by the way, before Becky 2 belts. So WrestleMania came April following this October. And you saw the progression.
Well, Survivor Series was a month after this, and that's when it all turned for Becky, when she gets hit in the face by Nia, breaks her nose, bloody nose.
That's when that's when the man became the number one character in WWE.
Yeah.
And they had no choice but to change the booking for WrestleMania and make sure she was in that match. At this time, I believe they felt like putting her over Charlotte was enough to placate the fans, and then they could go back to Charlotte and Ronda and kind of build that for WrestleMania. And then Becky won this. And then they did the awesome TLC match with Asuka, I want to say, that December, 2 months later, which was, talk about one of the most underrated women's matches in WWE history. That triple threat at, I don't even remember the name of the show, but it was December that year. It was at TLC, excuse me, obviously. It was WWE back then. You had a TLC match at TLC. That was incredible. And then, of course, right before that, she got punched in the face. Then Becky lost the title to Asuka, won the Royal Rumble, and then we got Becky 2 belts. At WrestleMania, and it was incredible. So this was kind of almost the catalyst of the fans are not going to give up on Becky. And you felt it in the arena, and they should have main evented the show, even as a non-title match, even with Ronda Rousey and Nikki Bella on the card. Simple as that. That was the main event. Ronda Rousey successfully defended her WWE Women's Championship against Nikki Bella. What was smart about this match is they were able to involve Brie without allowing her to fully wrestle, because Nikki's a far better wrestler than Brie. 2-on-1 was also the only way to make it believable. The idea of Ronda struggling to take out Nikki. The star power involved here was obvious, but again, it never should have been the main event. And I remember saying that at the time. I think everyone agreed. Becky Charlotte was better. The crowd was way hotter for that match. That's not to say it was bad by any means. I'm at 3.75 stars B+ for it. What stood out again is that Ronda was so much better in her first run than her second run. I have no clue what happened to her exactly. It was not just from a character standpoint or the way fans reacted. It was the wrestling too. But she was actually enjoyable here with Nikki. It was a perfectly fine main event for the show. It just shouldn't have been in that spot.
This reminded me them signing Ronda Rousey. That was going to be the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a thing I completely forget happened. The most memorable thing of Ronda Rousey's WWE run to me is the awkward pin by Becky to win the belts at WrestleMania.
Oh my God, that's not even top 5 for me.
I remember her debut match at WrestleMania 34. That was great. You and I were both.
You also remember her with The Rock kind of jumping into I know she wasn't signed then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't remember much of any. And I just think for something that was going to be the biggest thing, and like take women's wrestling in WWE to another level. They thought Ronda was going to be the one to do that. Like, what is her WWE legacy? It's so bizarre.
It's
to look back.
overrated and improperly used, probably, would be the way I look at it. I mean, the fact that they never gave her Paul Heyman, it just was moronic.
Yeah.
It was moronic.
Like she could never get down the cadence of wrestling talk, and it was always a problem, and they never tried to fix it. And they never did anything to help her along the way. That was always very weird.
The number one Ronda Rousey moment for me was the 3-way brawl with Charlotte and Becky. They kicked out a window of a cop car, and they all got arrested. That's Ronda Rousey's peak in WWE. That was the build for WrestleMania 35.
Yeah.
It was all downhill after that.
But in terms of her like being the top of the division, like nothing really memorable came of that, which is just interesting to look back on. Because I'm sure she got a ton of money and she's a huge star. And now it's like, there's like, if she were to come back, nobody would care. Like, that's what's kind of wild about it.
Yeah, no one would care. They looked at her as the female Brock Lesnar. The difference was Brock Lesnar was literally one of a kind. And even though Ronda Rousey was a legitimate trailblazer for UFC, and I don't say trailblazer meaning she was the first. I mean trailblazer meaning she grew women's MMA in popularity to a degree that no one before or since has. And it's just a fact. Shayna Baszler was more of a trailblazer technically for MMA than Ronda Rousey because she did it earlier and she made it legitimate. But even though she was that, she never was that for WWE. She was part of the evolution of the women's division, and certainly having her star power helped, but she was not must-watch television like Brock Lesnar was at that time. When Brock won the title and was dominating people and did Suplex City with John Cena, I mean, that made, I don't want to say it made national news necessarily. It brought attention from legitimate sports fans. I think Ronda initially, for a couple occasions, when she was in WWE, she brought that over, but it was never the same. WWE would sell out cards because Brock Lesnar was on it. That was never Ronda Rousey's star power, especially in a wrestling context. And even though Heyman always spoke for Lesnar, or usually spoke for Lesnar, Brock had such a, I hate to use the word, aura and personality with his facial expressions and his presence. Yeah. And Ronda just didn't have that. I mean, it certainly didn't help that. Like, what I remember most about her wrestling is how often she would tug her shorts down. I mean, that's what I remember about Ronda Rousey.
Which she did in this match.
Which she did in this match many times, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was interesting to look back. Like, she's the main event. She's getting cheered. They close the show with all the women on the Titantron, on the stage to Ronda's theme. And it's like, man, I look back at what is the legacy of this show? Like, not what you would have thought at the time.
Right.
Ronda's gone. Sasha Banks is gone. We're not relying on legends anymore. Like, so much of the main points of Evolution are not around anymore or didn't work. And yet WWE Women's Wrestling is as good, if not better, than it's ever been.
And that's what's crazy about 2025 Evolution is that, if it truly had a more significant build, we'd be coming into this show saying this might be a new tentpole for women's wrestling. If this was booked, let's say, as well as, WWE's premium live event booking has not been great recently, okay? But let's say it was built as well as night one of WrestleMania, just as an example, or night one of a SummerSlam or Survivor Series, okay? Let's say it was built that well. Then you could come into this and say, if they do what they can do, given the caliber of talent, and they put on incredible matches with great storytelling, this might be a flag in the ground saying women's wrestling is not only here, but we're going to take over WWE. And if not, we're sure as hell going to try. And instead, we're kind of coming into it, I don't want to say with a whimper, but it's not booked as well as it could have been. And the card may well over-deliver to a significant degree. All the matches may wind up being bangers. But if you don't have that momentum coming in, it's really tough to have that momentum coming out as well.
I don't really, like, in terms of the big picture, I don't really care if the creative's good or not, whether or not this becomes a show. Like, I look up and down this card. The whole point of the first Evolution was like, there's a lot of women in this company that aren't getting enough time or don't get enough attention. Like, let's do some things to show them off. On this card, we've got women we see every week.
Right.
Becky, Bailey, Jade, Lyra, Tiffany Stratton, like Roxanne, like Alexa, like they're all on TV every week doing a lot. So there's not, like, that's the thing. Nothing feels special about this show, and that's a good thing. I don't know if Evolution is going to continue on in the future. I also don't think it has to.
You know, like I don't even disagree with that whole, it doesn't feel special and that's a good thing, because it's a completely legitimate take. But I wonder, and I know WWE has to book for SummerSlam and they have to think ahead to the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, but I wonder what it would have been like if they decided Evolution was crazy important and they booked Io Sky against Asuka and Rhea Ripley against Raquel Rodriguez, let's just say, because she's not a title holder right now, in that last woman standing match or a hardcore match. And you had, let's say, Stephanie Vaquer and all of them didn't get called up from NXT yet. And you had Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, Jordan Grace, and Roxanne Perez for the NXT women's title. And you had Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair against Alexa Bliss in a triple threat for that crown. And then you had the Becky Lynch, Lyra Valkyria Bailey match, and so on and so forth. And you kind of went down the line.
Right.
If you had a card like that, where you say, this is our, not just a women's premium live event, this is our women's WrestleMania, then I think you could get away with, you know, some of the stuff we've talked about where their build isn't as strong for WrestleMania sometimes as the men, and certainly not this year, and the last 2 years, really. And it isn't as strong for SummerSlam as it should be, because this is the WrestleMania. So if you want to do Evolution in the future, and maybe our perception about this will change Sunday once the show's over, but I'm thinking if you want to do Evolution in the future, build it like the women's event of the year. Your biggest matches are on the show. Go absolutely crazy, because guess what? You have a deep enough division where you can still have major dream matches at WrestleMania and SummerSlam and all these other shows and still completely blow out Evolution. And if you do, maybe you're not selling 7,000 or 8,000 tickets. Maybe you're selling 15,000 and selling out an arena, and maybe you don't need to jam it in as the third event on a weekend, and it can be the only event on a weekend.
Yeah, but that goes to our larger WWE pay-per-view booking, which is like they're only saving the biggest matches for SummerSlam or WrestleMania. And
I'm just saying that's the way to make it feel truly special again. To say,
agree. Yeah,
we're not just doing a premium live event, we're doing the premium live event for the women.
Like it, I mean, I guess there's a lot of championship they're all championship matches, so maybe I'm wrong, but like you could make this, you could have said this is an episode of Raw, like a special episode of Raw, and it would have been like, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you what's crazy. There have been episodes of NXT the last couple of years where like 85 to 90% of the people on the show were women. And you wouldn't even notice it until the show was almost over. You'd say, oh, wait, have there been men on this episode? And it was just as good as it otherwise would be with men involved or 50-50 or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just the interesting perspective that we kind of can take out of 18 into 25, saying,
I guess
maybe the show isn't that special anymore, but it could be. There's still a way they could make it that way.
As I look at this card, I guess I would push back a little bit. Like, they do have the NXT Women's Championship, the Women's World Championship, the WWE Women's Championship, the IC they're almost. There's a number one contender match. Only one of these is not a tag team, is not a championship match. You know what this is? This is Women's Night of Champions.
It's there's more championship matches on this than there were on Night of Champions, no question.
Yeah, 6 title matches altogether out of 7 matches. Also, by the way, 7 matches on a card. Thank you. That's great to see.
But I believe this is the most matches on a card other than WrestleMania or SummerSlam or whatever in 2 years for WWE. So it seems to be aligning with exactly what we got in that first Evolution. 7 matches, 6 regular, and a Battle Royal. And I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So that wraps up our WWE Evolution retrospective. And before we move forward, I would be remiss if I did not say that here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Over head. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis post each week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We're a free show. We're an ad-free show, and we would just appreciate a bit of financial support. While we also give you additional content, it would mean a lot to both Vintage and the Silver King. Hit us up, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. over. Now, I did mention that the WWE Evolution Ultimate Preview plus NXT and the NXT Great American Bash Ultimate Preview were all coming up.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
And I just forgot to mention this off the top because Charlotte Flair, well, I guess technically Ashley Flair, wrote a piece for the Players Tribune this week that was published on Tuesday. It's highly personal. I'm not going to get into all of it because you can read it for yourself. It's free. She doesn't really speak about her booking or anything like that, but she did admit what we already knew. Some of the stuff with Tiffany Stratton was not planned, and she did get emotionally affected by it. She only points out something Tiffy said, and she doesn't address her role in that feud, of course, because it's a first-person narrative, and we blame others for, seeming slights. But it was a key into what we already knew about the situation. She also said that she looks for equality among women's wrestlers these days, not as getting the same TV time or main events or money as the men, but rather being able to enjoy the same length of their careers, working into their 40s and even their 50s. I thought that was a pretty interesting take from Charlotte, and really a completely fair one. Asuka and Natalya, they're both 43. They're probably the oldest women on the roster right now. Meanwhile, you have John Cena, Randy Orton, CM Punk, all north of 45. Orton indicating he might be going until 50. And one other part of this that caught my eye was that she and Andrade were still perfectly happy when he re-signed with WWE. Tearing her right knee before he re-debuted and they were getting ready to travel the world together, it kind of unraveled everything in their relationship. And she didn't specify, surely the knee injury was not the singular reason. I'm sure there were other issues going on between them. But it seemed like that was going to be a catalyst for them to kind of move forward together. And once that happened and he was gone and she was home and couldn't compete and stuff, maybe it exasperated some issues or whatever the case might have been. But she also said that while she was injured and recovering, she decided to try and get pregnant. And she unsuccessfully went through a handful of fertility treatments that, of course, made her depressed and upset that she now believes, I think she said this, that she probably won't be able to have a child herself. And that, of course, for a woman who wants to have a child like that can be, a significant blow. So it's a must read, this piece from Charlotte. The stuff she wrote about the 4 horsewomen in particular was quite poignant. And I'm glad she kind of saved it for the end because it really echoed a lot of what Becky Lynch said in her book about them. And certainly we've heard Bayley and Mercedes Moné speak about them separately, not really at length like Becky did, and certainly not the way Charlotte did in this narrative. But it is worth a read. It's on the Players Tribune. And I just wanted to make sure we mentioned it because we didn't really cover this in the WWE news section on Tuesday's show. And this being our coverage of Evolution and Charlotte, of course, having a significant role in the first one and certainly in this one as well, it made a lot of sense to address it here. So that's your WWE news item here as we move into our WWE Evolution Ultimate Preview. Now, before we go match by match on this Evolution card, and I just wanted to note we're going to run that in a similar fashion to what we did with Saturday night's main event. I have some pre-taped thoughts from Vintage that I'm going to insert as the kind of intro for each match before I discuss it a little bit further and give my prediction. I did want to address 2 prevailing topics of heavy conversation coming into this show. The first being the booking of it, and the second being expected attendance and the way it's going to be perceived. Ultimately, what we're about to discuss, it's a somewhat loaded card. Rhea Ripley, Io Sky is among the best matches WWE can put on. Tiffany Stratton against Trish Stratus, it's a passing of the torch type of deal. The problem with both is that there was zero build to these particular matches happening at this particular show. Tiffany, Trish, they have history on screen that could easily have been used to create a match. Rhea and Io have major history, both in the ring and even wrestling one another specifically this year. But rather than utilize all of that and take the time to create specific reasons for why those 2 matches are happening, the champions just chose their challengers. Womp womp. JC Jane, Jordan Grace, it's not the best match NXT could put on, but given the 3 recent call-ups of Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, and Roxanne Perez, plus the experience levels of Jordan and JC, it's the least risky match that NXT could put on the show, and it does have legitimate story and build coming into it. Naomi, Jade Cargill, and the Intercontinental Championship are both fully 100% developed through storyline, and they are the most legitimate matches to be featured and built for this card. You can't even put a black mark against either of them. The injury to Liv Morgan, it affected at least her singles match with Nikki Bella. Not sure if there also would have been a tag team title match on the card. Either way, that's a plans change situation. So I'm not going to poo-poo a tag match with 4 legitimate teams, including interesting new pairing and the Kabuki Warriors getting back together. That came together pretty damn well for a short turnaround. And then you have the Battle Royal, a get everyone on the card match, which is exactly what they had in 2018. So when you break down the entirety of the Evolution card, it's actually loaded from a match quality standpoint. And the booking was only truly poor for the 2 biggest titles. But guess what? Io, Tiffy, and their titles, they've been booked like shit since WrestleMania. So that is not a creative doesn't care about Evolution issue. It's a creative has torpedoed the women's titles issue. Given they are the 2 most prominent matches, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and that sucks. But it's also unfair to suggest that an entire card was not booked well when the problem is only 2 of the 7 matches that are on the card. The other 5 have been booked perfectly fine, if not incredibly well, when it comes to Jade and Naomi and the Intercontinental Championship. Still, there are problems with the way Evolution has been scheduled and presented to us. Vintage and I told you all months ago that WWE was going to struggle with creative given there were so many special events being jammed into such a short window. We are now seeing all of that play out. I've seen takes that WWE set up Evolution to fail, some suggesting it was accidental, others going so far as to say there were nefarious intentions because WWE doesn't want to have to run the show again. First of all, that's moronic, okay? If WWE can run an all-women show and sell, let's say, 10,000 tickets as a business, why would they not want to do that? There's sponsorship money, ticket sales money, merchandise, incredible PR. So that's a dumbass take that they would intentionally sabotage their own show. But did WWE set it up to fail accidentally? I wouldn't say that exactly. I wouldn't use those terms. What I would say is WWE did not give Evolution the best possible chance to succeed, primarily given the way the title matches were booked, partially as a consequence of having so little time between events. Furthermore, placing it as the second WWE event, main roster, on a weekend in Atlanta, head-to-head with a Beyonce concert, was simply ridiculous. The only thing worse would have been going against Taylor Swift. Now, WWE, they've sold more than 11,000 tickets for Saturday night's main event and just 5,000 tickets for Evolution as of last Friday. So I misspoke earlier when I said 7,000 or 8,000. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe they'll get there by the time Friday rolls around. But as of last Friday, 7 days out from the show, they were only at 5,000. Now, the setup for Evolution is 6,700. So they were anticipating a lower demand. The setup, by the way, is accounting for the same demand as what Evolution got as a solo show in 2018. That was an inaugural edition with a card 1/3 comprised of legends. WWE is hotter now, but this is mostly the active women's roster. It's not the first such show. It's the second event on a weekend, and it's against Beyonce. So again, was it set up to fail? No, because that's dumb thinking. But if WWE wanted Evolution to become an annual, can't-miss event, then it should have done everything in its power to set it up to succeed. And that it absolutely did not do. With that said, let's go match by match, breaking down WWE Evolution 2025 Ultimate Preview style. As always, I will discuss anything that happened on Raw and SmackDown leading into the match to start. We'll then flip over to the take from Vintage that he sent in for the show. Of course, we will provide picks, predictions, analysis, and our expectations when it comes to storylines coming out of this show. Let's kick it off with the Battle Royal for a number 1 contendership at Clash in Paris. Nikki Bella cut a tape promo on Raw saying the attack from Liv Morgan lit a fire under her ass. She's ready to return more than she ever has been before. She said she wanted one more moment to prove herself to her fans and her son, so she was entering the match because she wanted the opportunity at Clash in Paris. Nikki promised to not only make history, but prove why she's fearless. I thought this was straight up nails from start to finish. One thing this woman could always do was talk. Was it scripted? Of course it was scripted, but she delivered it extremely well, and it was solidly produced. She looked good. The conviction she expressed in joining the match, that was important because it didn't feel like an add-on due to booking changing, but rather something she was motivated and excited to do for her own intrinsic reasons. And if you're going to put a legend like her in this match and everyone knows coming in that she was supposed to fight someone else, you need to make sure you get that across. As mentioned previously, Ivy Nile was announced as competing in the match on Raw. Stephanie Vaquer received a short video package Monday night, tagged by the word dominate. It was okay. She had entered the Battle Royal last week during a commercial break interview that did not air on television. Why they aren't heavily featuring Stephanie on Raw, I cannot explain, given she is ridiculously over. Speaking of, on NXT Tuesday night, participants from that brand were announced in a main event segment helmed by Ava. Nikki actually got booed by the crowd when it was mentioned she was in the match, when it was mentioned she was in the main event of the first Evolution. I thought that was really weird that they booed her. The 6 NXT women involved are going to be Jada Parker, Lola Vice, Kalani Jordan, Lash Legend, Izzy Dame, and Tatum Paxley.
Thank you.
Legend said she would win in her hometown. Vaquer surprised by showing up. She got the pop of the night, saying she and Jordan Grace would win their respective matches. The Dungeon Dolls are out next, with Maxine Dupree putting over Natalya as a legend. Zelina Vega, Ivy, and Lola Vice, they surrounded the ring with Parker talking her talk in the crowd, and Julia was standing right behind her the entire time. Candice LeRae came out of nowhere. Lani also seemed to make her way down to the ring, and there was a show-ending brawl. This got the job done to introduce the participants. It got the crowd hot for both matches and Evolution as a whole. Nikki getting booed again, quite interesting. It was odd that Stephanie got a huge entrance, but Julia was just there behind Jada and didn't even jump her from behind or anything like that. That would have been pretty cool if that's how the entire brawl started. Now, if WWE was real, they would let Tatum win this entire thing and then have her beat the champion at Clash in Paris. I'm joking, of course. It's great that she's getting a chance in this match alongside the usual suspects. This is her first ever PLE match on a main card. And that's a step in the right direction for Paxley. I'd like to see her get some run here, but really just being on the show is important. It was crazy, though not surprising, how the crowd was more hyped for Vaquer than pretty much every other woman combined. And it was smart for WWE to use the women who live locally from the main roster to bolster the segment. All in all, a strong end to NXT and a nice moment ahead of Evolution. So let's get to our picks and predictions for the match, throwing it over to Vintage Chris Vanini.
I really don't know at all what to make of this because we don't know a ton of people who are going to be in it. One of the ones we do, I guess I'll say Stephanie Vaquer. She is very hot right now. I'm not saying she's going to win at Clash in Paris. Actually, I'm going to take that back. Let me change, actually. No, I'm going to say Chelsea Green wins this Battle Royal if she's in it. I guess we don't actually know. She's a heel, and on SmackDown, that would put her against either Jade or, I guess, Tiffany Stratton or Naomi if Naomi cashes in. But I'm going to say Chelsea Green wins, gets a big pop, gets a world championship shot. She's kind of, she got hurt her nose, hasn't been doing much since. But when she lost the U.S. championship to Zelina Vega, I thought, all right, now we can move Chelsea into world championship picture. Not necessarily win yet, but she's still really, really over. I think she should be in the world title picture. I'm going to go with Chelsea Green winning.
Chelsea's actually a great shout. I had thought about her as one of my final, 5 people who I thought might come out of this match. But the fact that you have Nikki in here and you have Stephanie and Julia and some other, real notable names, and obviously plenty of women who have not been announced for the match but are going to show up. Both legends we can certainly expect, but also main roster superstars that just haven't been announced for it that you will clearly be part of it. You have to remember that the result of the match is going to be a number 1 contendership at Clash in Paris. And while I love Chelsea Green and Chris loves Chelsea Green and most of you love Chelsea Green, she's not exactly a legitimate contender to win a main world title off of either Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, Tiffany Stratton, Jade Cargill, or potentially Naomi. And I don't think you would run Naomi and Chelsea as a title match at Clash in Paris, which is almost certainly going to be a 5 or 6 match show that, people paying hundreds of dollars or francs or euros, whatever they're calling it over there, for those tickets. So you have to think, what is a big money match that they can make for that show? And for me, the answer is Stephanie Vaquer coming out of this as the winner. Now, has that been telegraphed by the fact that she was basically the first person to announce for the match? She's the biggest star outside of Nikki Bella as of right now that is in the match, and no one else there compares to her. Yeah, I mean, it does seem pretty obvious in that way. And it would be nice if they threw us for a loop and there was a swerve and someone surprising won. But most of the other major women right now are competing in big time matches on the Evolution card. Really, the only person I can think of off the top of my head that is not booked for the show are two wrestlers who are not healthy, and that's Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair. So if Bianca surprises by getting cleared and she shows up in this match, then I would take Belair to win. But in lieu of that, I think the answer has to be Vaquer. And to that end, this is not giving away my prediction at the end, but if it is going to be Vaquer coming here, you do not want to run Rhea and Stephanie for the first time at a B-level show in Paris. I mean, that's a SummerSlam, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble level main event match. That's a big time first showdown. And I'm not suggesting that Stephanie and Io would not be as great of a match, but from a star power standpoint, Io is still a level, unfortunately, below Rhea. And I think that'd be a lot more palatable. It would also be an incredible match between them. So my guess is that Vaquer comes out as the winner of this Battle Royal. Continuing to move down the card, we have the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship. Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez defending against the Kabuki Warriors, Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, and then Sol Ruca and Zarya, better known to NXT fans as Zaruka. They were just announced for the match during Raw, and then they celebrated that they were in the match on NXT. This would have been perfectly fine, given they're the most legitimate team in the division on NXT, except they literally lost a tag match clean last Tuesday, despite being 3-1 in such matches before that. If you're going to put them in this match unceremoniously, then they should have defeated Izzy Dame and Tatum Paxley last week, or been put in a qualifying match this week to get into it. This just speaks to the lacking build for the show and how thrown together this became, that they needed a team from NXT and they chose the right one, but that didn't necessarily coincide with NXT booking as it was happening. Now, with the Raw side not announced early on Raw, I initially figured it was going to be the Bella Twins, or at least Nikki and a partner, surprising at Evolution in this spot, not getting previously announced. However, with Kyrie beating on Monday one half of the champions in Roxanne, Asuka then saving her from a post-match attack by the heels, and the Warriors themselves being an established team of former champions, well, they made a ton of sense slotting in here. The Warriors demanded that spot in a backstage segment, and Adam Pearce added them to it right away. This ensured both of them were in a spot on this card better than they otherwise would have been, which, of course, would have been the Battle Royal. And it allowed this match, frankly, to brim with star power when you run down the list of challengers. It's actually an extremely legitimate set of contenders when you consider that 3 of the 6 women who are going after the titles are former women's champions. And this probably is not going to steal the entire show, but I wouldn't be shocked if this completely over-delivers to expectation. I mean, imagine like Sol Ruca and Asuka going at it. Like, that's going to be really cool if they do it. So you have Asuka, Kyrie, Charlotte, Alexa Bliss, and then Sol Ruca, who's, potentially the biggest star coming out of NXT right now. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Jada Parker and some of the other women there, but the ceiling that Sol has is probably even higher, and athletically, she's incredible. And then Zarya, who's an absolute beast. So you're going to get some Zarya stuff with Raquel that's going to be interesting. I am really looking forward to this match a lot more than I was 1 week ago at this time. Let's hear from Vintage on this.
Normally I would have thought Charlotte and Alexa win here because they've got an actual storyline that's working together. And it's interesting, like the frenemies type of stuff, patting each other on the head, the way things went on SmackDown, like they've got some momentum. Like, I kind of like this team, and I actually hope it continues. And I'd love for these two to just stay in the tag team division. But I like Raquel and Roxanne. And again, like Judgment Day 3.0 or whatever we're going to call this, it's kind of working. And they've got all the gold. Like, I'd stick with it. I'm going to say Raquel and Roxanne retain. I think it's very, very possible Charlotte and Alexa win, but I'm going to go with Judgment Day retaining.
Agree with Vintage that Charlotte and Alexa have momentum, and they probably should win the titles at some point in the next few months. But as we suggested 3 weeks ago, and then discussed 2 weeks ago, Judgment Day all being strapped up with gold, it's a great sight right now, and it's given the faction a lot of momentum in this new incarnation. Beyond that, the precise way you stomp out the interest in this new direction for Flair is to immediately strap her up with the title now that she's in a tag team. This happens nearly every time she returns to the company from a layoff. She gets injected right into a main event storyline and frequently wins a championship coming out of it. Charlotte and Alexa, they should not be a finished product at this juncture. They should still be figuring each other out, learning how to work together, developing trust, which they don't have, and growing as a team. So if you want to run this 2-on-2 at SummerSlam and flip the straps in 3 weeks, okay, I can stomach that, even if I wish Raquel and Roxy would keep them beyond SummerSlam. But changing them here, when Perez has not even successfully defended them as part of being a champion yet, that would be foolish, especially since she took the fall on Raw to Sane already. So that would mean she got named one half of the tag team champions and then loses 2 matches in a row. And that's a terrible look for someone you're trying to build up and you actually believe in as a future star in this women's division. With Kyrie, Sol, and Zarya all in this match, someone else can take the fall without Charlotte and Alexa being the ones to directly lose. That keeps them alive as contenders, and it's by far the best move. In fact, Roxy should probably be the one getting the fall. I'd have Roxy pin Sol and maybe even consider having her come down to NXT and challenging for the North American Championship or something, because why not? You can run that. Then you can run Raquel and Roxy against Zaruka 2-on-2 in NXT, give them a legitimate title defense down there so they get one more successful defense, then flip the straps at SummerSlam if you desire. But that is the way this needs to go. Roxy and Raquel retaining the tag team championships. Before we move on, the only other note I have real quick is I do hope this does not stunt Sane's growth as a babyface singles competitor, her being part of the Warriors again. It appeared as if she was being built firmly into the mid-card as part of this Intercontinental title picture, and I don't want that to stop. Similarly, I hope we get team chemistry development from Flair and Bliss during this match, and it is not a situation where they just work together without issue, where even if they don't win, where it looks like they're a finished product and they just didn't factor into the finish. There needs to continue to be issues between them, just not so big that they split, enough where they say, hey, look, if we're going to work together, if we want to win these titles, then we need to actually figure this shit out. So there's a lot of great opportunity for storytelling in this match, and I hope all of that gets delivered upon. Moving over to our next title opportunity on the show, I should say title defense on the show. The NXT Women's Championship will be on the line. Jacy Jayne against Jordynne Grace. Fatal Influence, which is the faction of which Jane leads. Really not faction, I want to say group, because it's only 3 of them. They interrupted the main event segment on NXT, complaining about not being respected. Grace then interrupted, saying Jane doesn't make Evolution special. The event is about the women who paved the way for them, and she would be steering the division into the future. She, of course, being Jordynne. Now, this is running in conjunction with a tag team storyline they're doing on NXT, and there's going to be a match on NXT Great American Bash, where Grace is teaming with Blake Monroe, the former Mariah May, against Jacy and Fallon Henley, who's another member of Fatal Influence. Normally, because that match is happening first, we would discuss it, and then we would talk about Jane and Grace. We don't have the opportunity to do that here because we're covering Evolution before we're handling Great American Bash. I'll hit you with my thoughts in a moment, but first, let's hear from Vintage.
I have to admit, I've not seen any of this. All I know is that Jordynne Grace is obviously a future star, a future world champion. The question is, do you do that now on this stage, or do you do it on a NXT type of event? Is this a big enough stage to make that change? Is this the big enough stage for Jordynne Grace to kind of have that crowning moment? You know, Jacy Jayne always felt like a transitional champion. I know she hasn't had it very long, but I'll go with Jordan Grace here. I think on a WWE branded show, it's a good time to make a title change, especially if you're not going to do many in all the others.
What's going to be extremely interesting is to see how much this Evolution card parallels the original Evolution card. Because as we discussed earlier in the show during the retrospective, the key title that changed hands at 2018 Evolution was the NXT Women's Championship. Shayna Baszler defeated Kairi Sane via submission to win that strap. And it was like a 12-minute match. Good, but could have been better. And I look at this in a similar fashion, in that if they are not going to change the other titles on the show, and we don't think they're going to for the women's tag team, we don't think they're going to when it comes to the WWE Women's Championship, little spoiler alert, we'll talk about that in a moment, and we're not sure what they're going to do with the Women's World Championship, then you look for opportunities to make news and make headlines. And what remains a constant with Jordan is that compared to the other women that were brought in alongside her, Stephanie Vaquer and Julia, she's accomplished the least. And there's really not a great reason for that, because Jordan is a fantastic wrestler. I think on NXT this week, really for the first time, we saw a lot more personality from her, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the Great American Bash Ultimate Preview. Now, JC being a transitional champion, might that be unfortunate if she drops it here? Sure. But at the same time, unless Grace is getting called up immediately after this show, then I simply do not understand why they would book this in any other way than Jordan winning the title. If you want me to stretch out my prediction and kind of see what WWE might do from a booking standpoint to make this a real moment, then what they could do is have Jordan and Blake beat JC and Fallon on Great American Bash, be extremely happy with each other as a tag team, then move over to Evolution. Jordan wins the title. Blake comes out to celebrate with her, turns heel, big moment. Monroe gets to stand tall. And now we have a really, really hot storyline to get people to tune into NXT on Tuesday, because don't forget what we always talk about on the show. Premium live events should be used to build interest in TV, just like TV should be used to build interest in premium live events. So I do have Jordan winning the title here. JC is a transitional champion, even if you wished for her that wasn't the case. The only question is, how long is that transition going to be? And that's not to poo-poo JC and say that she can't be a women's champion either in NXT or on the main roster. It's just that there's a lot of talented women on that brand that really kind of need that title to see what they can do. JC's been a finished product for a while. She should already be on Raw or SmackDown, as should Fallon Henley, by the way. And we've said that many times for those of you who listen to our NXT show. So Chris and I are in agreement. We have Jordan walking out as the new NXT Women's Champion. Jade Cargill against Naomi, no holds barred. Now, the stipulation was not on the graphic when the match was initially shown on SmackDown. And I didn't hear Joe Tessitore say it, although others say he did, so I just trust that he did. But I never heard it. When they showed the graphic on Raw, no holds barred was included. And I could not have imagined this match happening a second time without a stipulation. It's necessary here, given Naomi's continued attacks on Cargill, the segment that set this up with Naomi attacking Jade with her, new caution briefcase, and Jade's insistence to take care of Naomi once and for all. You'll remember the WrestleMania match was extremely strong. Dare I say underrated by others. So I actually come into this with relatively high expectations. Let's hear what Chris thinks.
It's no holds barred. So that does open the door for Naomi to kind of do some things to get a win, use the briefcase, use some other stuff to give her a fighting chance. But I can't see Jade Cargill losing going into her SummerSlam match for the championship. This is the time you're building the momentum for Jade. She gets a win over Naomi. Maybe Naomi gets it back with a cash-in later on her. But this has become a fun little rivalry. Every time one of them is out in the ring, the other one usually shows up to try to beat the other one up. And even though they've done WrestleMania and done some other things, this has been a fun, budding rivalry. So I'm going to say Jade wins, though.
It has to be Jade. I mean, she's the number one contender for the WWE Women's Championship at SummerSlam. You can't exactly have her lose here unless your plan was to make that a triple threat match. And because Naomi is holding the Money in the Bank briefcase, you're not going to make it a triple threat match. You want a potential cash and opportunity, or at least the tease of one, to get fans kind of wondering what's going to happen going into that showdown. So yeah, Jade does have to win here. And while that stipulation exists, and theoretically, when you do get a stipulation like no holds barred, it gives the heel a greater chance to win the match, and it also gives the babyface an out in many ways. It's just not something they're going to be able to take advantage of. But don't forget, like, Naomi hates Jade already. If she also loses to her here, just like she does at WrestleMania, that's all the motivation she needs to cash in the briefcase and either steal the strap from her after she beats Stiffy, or pull off the heist of the century part 2 by stealing her opportunity and getting the fall, ending the match before Jade even has a chance to win the title. So I wish I could go deeper on this, because it is one of the more intriguing matches and one of the better builds for this card. But it is also seemingly one of the more obvious results, and that is Jade beating Naomi in no holds barred and coming out still, of course, the number one contender, awaiting the expected champion at SummerSlam. So let's go ahead and move directly into that match, the WWE Women's Championship. Tiffany Stratton defending against Trish Stratus, and I have nothing else to add because we already discussed the build for this on our Tuesday WWE show. It was a big, terrible segment that was on SmackDown. And there was no further build on Raw. There probably will be some go-home stuff this coming Friday on SmackDown. But let's just start this off by hearing from Chris.
This is, I guess, the one spot you want to put the legend in on the show. You know, Tiffany's going to win this easily. I hope it's a good enough match. I'm curious how long it goes. There's no momentum or anything behind this. Like, compare this to Trish versus Becky and everything we had going on there. Just do not have that here. Tiffany wins.
If we didn't already know Stratton was retaining the title, perhaps this match could have been a bit more interesting if there was an extended build and Stratus kind of made a case for why she could not just be in the match, but actually contend against Tiffy. Then yeah, maybe there'd be more to talk about here and there'd be more interest in it coming in. Now, I'm curious about the match itself, the quality of it, how long it's going to go, for two reasons. One, this is Stratus's first singles title match in 19 years. It was 2006. I want to say Unforgiven. Silver King, I think, was just coming out of the University of Florida at that time. That's the last time Trish competed for a singles title. But two, the last time Trish wrestled a meaningful singles match was against Becky Lynch, and that was at Payback 2023. One of the most underrated women's matches in WWE history. I think I was at an A+. I absolutely loved what they did against each other in the ring. I still remember that superplex off the top of the steel cage. That was fantastic. But in this situation, against a younger opponent with SummerSlam coming up, you know, what are we even talking about here? Tiffany Stratton's going to retain the title, and she's going to move on to Jade Cargill, and then Trish will go away until WWE wants to bring her back for another legend spot. It's just a fact of the matter here. So let's go to what I believe should be the main event for WWE Evolution. Purely based on creative and how well this has actually been developed, the Intercontinental Championship, Becky Lynch defending against Bayley and Lyra Valkyria in a triple threat. Lynch opened hour 2 of Raw incensed that two losers, who literally lost to each other, got a title match at Evolution, putting her at a statistical disadvantage. Becky said she gets that she's the GOAT and a celebrity and Pierce needs her on the card, but she should have been allowed to pick her own opponent like the other two women's champions. Beck suggested they double pinned on purpose because they know they can only beat her by teaming up. Bayley entered with Lyra immediately following before she could even lift the mic. They relitigated everything, with Becky laughing that it was another failed Bayley friendship. Valkyria clarified that Lynch orchestrated everything at WrestleMania, so Bex tried to further wedge drive them. Lyra said Bayley not caring about friendships when titles are around, that makes her exactly like Becky, and she needs to rescue the title from a pair of disappointments. Bayley reminded that she's been supporting Lyra ever since she started on the main roster until she raised Becky's hand like a little bitch after losing the strap. Lyra got up on both of them with 2 Nightwings, both of which she did while standing. Now, Becky's promo individually was great as usual. The segment after that, it was relatively blah, just given how strong the build had been coming into this. It badly needed an exclamation point, and that's exactly what Bayley delivered in the close. it completely put this over the top. That plus the post-match action with Lyra standing tall, that turned this from mediocre to hugely positive, especially since the crowd cheered Valkyria coming out on top. They even did her woos. This is with two legends down on the canvas at her feet. Not the best segment overall, but also nothing to thumb one's nose at. I wouldn't have hated if they did like a series of taped promos here. The only other note I have is I was not a fan at all of the standing Nightwing. Much better as a seated move, and I hope they've not changed it as her finisher. It looks too much like a body slam if you're just doing it while standing, and I'm guessing they accomplished it in this manner because it was going to be one after another. You didn't want her sitting down, standing up, sitting down, standing up again. But if she's going to do her finisher, just let her do her finisher. The Nightwing is way better when it's done to completion as opposed to just standing. It feels like a half-assed type of move. Now, as I said, this really should be the main event of the show just based on storytelling and how well all three of them have done building this match. It's by far the most important and the best storyline going into Evolution. And there's a great chance that it steals the show and winds up being the best match on the card. That doesn't mean it will live up to those expectations. That's just my thought going into it. Before I give my prediction, let's hear from Vintage.
Obviously, Lyra stands tall at Raw. Don't think Lyra is going to win the title back, I guess, so quickly. It kind of makes me wonder, like, do you do another one of these at SummerSlam? That's Becky versus Bayley. I kind of thought the triple threat might be the thing you do at SummerSlam. But in this situation, on this stage, I don't think Bayley's winning the title away yet. I think Bayley could be the one to take it away from Becky, but not yet. Becky wins, Becky retains.
What's odd about this, and I've said it on prior episodes here of the podcast, is that this triple threat truly felt like the match in the feud that would be saved for SummerSlam. It felt like this should have been Becky Lynch and Bayley one-on-one. That was run on Raw. And then, of course, they did Bayley and Lyra to get to this triple threat. But I thought this should have been Becky and Bayley. Then you do that Bayley and Lyra match on TV. And then you build to the triple threat at SummerSlam. So I have no idea exactly where they're going in 3 weeks, because you would say, okay, well, however this match ends, you just go Becky and Lyra at SummerSlam, but then what does Bayley do? Because she's just as much a part of this storyline as they are. So another triple threat just 3 weeks later, but this time with a stipulation, like they're all locked in a steel cage or something like that. I'm not exactly sure why they're doing this now and what that means for either Bayley or Lyra in 3 weeks. But we're really just here to talk about Evolution at this moment. And just like Chris said, the booking needs to be Becky retaining the title. You don't have Lyra win it back in a triple threat scenario. I mean, now that I'm kind of saying it and it's ruminating in my head, I suppose you could have Lyra win it back by pinning Bayley. And that's why Becky wants another opportunity and Bayley feels it's unfair because, maybe she was going to win before Becky did something to her. I don't know. You could probably make another triple threat work with a title change happening on this show, but it really does seem clunky. The end of the day, what makes the most sense is Becky retaining the title, coming out of Evolution, taking it going into SummerSlam, and at least Lyra, if not both of them, matching up with her again for it. But to this point, I don't want to say the storytelling has been flawless, but all of them have proper motivations. I'm very much enjoying Lynch's character. Valkyria is showing a lot of gumption, standing up to not just one, but two different legends. And even Bayley, her promo coming back was pretty solid as well, as was the attack on Lynch. So I'm extremely excited for this. I'm most curious to see where it's going to go, but that doesn't mean the prediction is difficult. It is rather easy. And that is Becky walking out still the Intercontinental Champion. I will also mention, though, now that we know Tatum is on the show, if WWE was real, they'd have her help Lyra win back the title and then call Paxley up along her side. But we know WWE isn't real like that. And of course, they would never do it because the main roster audience doesn't know who Tatum Paxley is yet. That brings me to the expected main event of Evolution, the Women's World Championship, Io Sky defending against Rhea Ripley. A video package aired on Raw showing all of Io's defeats of Rhea from the Mae Young Classic and NXT to the main roster. Behind it was a brief snippet of audio from that fantastic interview Ripley did with, I believe, Jackie Redmond that never aired on TV, but we shared it on social media a couple weeks ago. Actually, now that I think about it, it might have been Kathy Kelly instead of Jackie, but nevertheless, it was a great interview that showed how real Rhea was as a person. It wasn't all just mommy on top spam and stuff like that, but they never showed it anywhere. And even here in this package, you only heard a brief snippet of audio. You didn't actually get to see Ripley, the person, speaking about her trials and tribulations. Now, that said, the package put both of them over equally, but there was no real new content other than a quick staged face-to-face somewhere backstage. Given there was zero recent build for this match, other than the challenge segment last week, which maybe lasted, 4 minutes, not having them both on the go-home Raw for either an in-ring segment or an extended interview deal backstage, that was immensely disappointing. The build could have been improved on the go-home, but instead, it was just half-assed, even more so than the initial challenge. Extremely strange, considering the level of both women and that this is likely going to be the final match on the card. Now, look, that said, you'll realize a moment ago I used the phrase recent build. And I said that because those suggesting this match was just randomly thrown together are purposefully ignoring the storyline between Rhea and Io this entire spring leading into WrestleMania, even coming out of WrestleMania. I think they had a stare down and maybe even teamed on like the Raw afterward, or maybe that was 2 weeks later. The problem is not a lack of storyline here. There is storyline. The problem is WWE having done nothing with Io since Mania, despite the title change and her booking against Ripley and Bianca Belair, leveling her up to them. It was at the point where fans were going crazy for Io after Mania. So yeah, the build definitely deserves criticism, but it deserves the correct criticism, not irrational complaints that there's not reason for this match happening. All that said, for an expected main event, it's tough to want more from a matchup standpoint than arguably the two best in-ring performers that WWE has to offer right now going head-to-head. We've seen them put on bangers before, and I have no doubt they're going to do it again, especially given the stage and the situation. Now, before I give you my prediction, let's see what Vintage thinks.
Again, no build to this on Raw. Not a ton of build to this in general, which is why I don't think Rhea Ripley's going to get the title back yet. I'm going to pick Io Sky. I love Rhea. I like her more than Io. I think being champ makes sense, but Io's done so little with the championship since winning it. You can't have her lose it this quickly. I know she won an Elimination Chamber, but like she hasn't defended it very much. Let her get a clean win over Rhea Ripley, and then maybe we start to develop some character for Rhea. She has to build her way back up. Let her doubt herself a little bit. She just kind of keeps pushing her way into title matches, and at some point that's going to wear thin on fans, I think. I hope. So I'm going to go Io Sky wins.
From Chris's mouth to the Lord's ears. I mean, I hope everything he said is what happens, because it's exactly how I feel. Io has not been booked well enough as champion. Not even booked well enough. She hasn't been on television. She hasn't had the opportunities to defend her championship, enough of them, to then be able to take it off of her after this period of time. How this is booked is going to be my greatest concern. I feel the dread washing over, realizing Io seems likely to lose Sunday coming into the show. If she had been successfully defending her title over the last 80 days since WrestleMania, losing it to Rhea after beating her for it 130 days ago, I'd have no complaint. I'd still disagree with the booking, but I'd be able to say, look, Io beat Rhea on Raw, defended the title successfully at WrestleMania, and had, let's say, 3 more successful defenses before losing it while getting over with the fans as champion. The problem is she's had 0 defenses, period, since WrestleMania, and has been relegated to the background while WWE ran Money in the Bank qualifiers and Queen of the Ring tournament matches. That's the definition of fumbling momentum. The end of Io's reign should land her as a top 3 woman in the division. Instead, if she just drops it here, she'll come off as firmly in the second level. Should the title change Sunday, it's also going to hurt the beginning of Ripley's reign, because a portion of the fan base is going to be bothered with the way it transpired. The entire division focused around Rhea with the quickness for no good reason when she's still massively over without the strap. This ultimately is a tough prediction. A title change would be a huge main event moment to cap the show. Given both are baby faces, there's not an easy out for Ripley to lose, especially given how often Rhea has straight up lost to Io. Plus, if she drops this match, she simply could not get another title chance as long as Sky is champion. It would be completely nonsensical. Like, you can't have Io win, let's say with a small package here, and then have Rhea come out on Raw and say, okay, I want to fight you again at SummerSlam. Because if that is not what happens, then what is the World Women's Championship match at SummerSlam? Like, based on the talent that's on Raw right now, unless you're going to give us Io and Asuka, which really should be the match on that card, it'd be incredible, then Io and Rhea is the match for SummerSlam, you would think. And if you did get Io and Asuka at SummerSlam, what exactly is Ripley doing? She's not going to fight Rodriguez again. She's separated from Judgment Day. Who else on Raw is there for her to battle on the biggest show of the summer for WWE, the second biggest show of the year now that it's a 2-night card? Looking at the Raw roster as it exists right now, the only legitimate options would be Bayley if she's not involved with Becky and Lyra. Or maybe it's another spot where you use Nikki Bella. That's it. That's what the Raw roster looks like right now. So that's my confusion, right? What do you do with Rhea if she for SummerSlam if she doesn't win the title here? So while I am firmly in the camp that Io should retain, and she would if I had the pencil, and she would go on to fight Asuka at SummerSlam, I gotta go with Ripley winning the championship 3 weeks before SummerSlam, as much as I dislike it, because I don't know what else they would do. But I promise you, if I had the pencil and it was completely up to me, it would be Io over Ripley here, Io over Asuka at SummerSlam, Io over Vaquer at Clash in Paris, and then if you want to give Ripley a title match after that, then you put Rhea over Io. Sky is established. Ripley regains the title before Crown Jewel, which is going to be in Australia, Survivor Series War Games, Royal Rumble, and she takes it into WrestleMania. And that's when you have Ripley against Bianca Belair in the main event of night one. Again, that's just what the Silver King would do. So that wraps up our WWE Evolution Ultimate preview. Quickly, pre-show expectation grades. Vintage texted me while I was taping this. He's at an A-. He did not give me a numerical grade. I'm at an A- as well, because as I said earlier, even if the build for this has not been absolutely incredible, and it certainly has not been, there's enough on this card in terms of high match quality potential, and there are many matches that have legitimate storylines and things that will generate significant fan interest, that this should be able to exceed what for many others appear to be low expectations. So my numerical expectation grade coming in here, like I said, I agree with an A-. I'm going to say a 92 out of 100. I really do expect this to be an absolute banger show, and I believe they will be able to deliver. So that takes us out of WWE Evolution and into NXT. First, we're going to discuss everything that happened on the show Tuesday night, and then we're going to give you an NXT Great American Bash Ultimate preview. Ricky Saints took on the Vanity Project Gauntlet to open NXT. He beat Brad Baylor first. This dude is such a classic 80s shithead heel, really a heat magnet. Ricky Smokes took a ringside suplex that was absolutely gnarly. He got beat with an inverted atomic drop and a jackknife cover. Jackson Drake was third, which was interesting as a decision because he's the current Evolve champion. Not that it should be a barrier to Saints beating him, but rather because any champion that loses a match should theoretically have to defend the title against the person who beats them, especially when it's at the end of a gauntlet. Anyway, Saints and Drake worked well together before it ended with Saints getting knees up on a flying senton and hitting Rochambeau to end it. Then he set his stipulation, which we'll talk about in the Ultimate preview. Going about 15 minutes with 3 guys below his station was perfectly fine for a gauntlet like this. Obviously, you want to see someone work much harder if the talent was more established, but this was a fine way to kind of solidify the match at Great American Bash, get Saints some ring work, given he hasn't been wrestling that much, and put a spotlight on both Vanity Project and Evolve because they are extremely talented dudes. It was kind of funny that Saints, despite being diminutive in his own right, He looked like he was beating up a bunch of high schoolers here. Oh, and also Ethan Page was great on commentary throughout. No surprise. Joe Hendry and Mike Santana fought high rise. The heels actually had a nice run, showed a ton of improvement. Santana got the hot tag, hit a tope con hero that was real close to disaster. Gotta give credit to Tyreek Igwe for basically throwing his body so low that Santana actually had a landing spot. Kind of a veteran move there. Hendry almost hip-tossed himself over the top rope outside, but as Santana was going for the finish, Wesley distracted with the referee. That allowed Trick Williams to chuck Hendry into the steel steps. Santana rebounded anyway, got the win. The heels attacked 4-on-2 after the bell. Williams poorly landed trick kick and trick shot to end it. Neither of them connected well, and as I've said hundreds of times on this show, he should not be doing either of those moves as signatures. Color me impressed with High Rise here. They're clearly leveling up the more work they get. Surely helps that they're wrestling across brands and such. Hendry and Santana, they did what they needed to do. The post-match attack, it left a lot to be desired simply because it was not that impactful by the time it was over. Laney Reed acted an ass backstage as Zaruka were excited about their big weekend. Kalani Jordan, who I guess is back on the babyface side of Tweener, she stood up to her alongside Lola Vice, basically pointing out she's new and she should shut her trap. That led to a match. So we had Jordan against Reed. Jordan sold a knee, but still hit a handspring back elbow. Reed caught her on the ropes, but Jordan pushed her off and then hit a really crazy springing turnaround, split-legged moonsault, her one-of-a-kind finisher with some extra oomph, and she got the win. Reed got attacked by Thea Hale after the bell, given their battle last week. The fact that she landed 80% of that move Lonnie did was almost as impressive as the fact that she could do it at all. That looked like a disaster waiting to happen, but she is so talented on the ropes that she made it work. Not sure I would do that outside of special matches and circumstances, but it was damn impressive, no question about that. We had Tavian Heights against Charlie Dempsey. The NQCC members entered together with Heights' future in the group on the line. Dempsey ripped off the Bane mask, leading to Heights going after him with a double leg takedown and later a rebound gut-wrench suplex using the ropes. Dempsey later threw Heights into the ring post atop the steel steps. His leg fell down between the steps and the post itself. So Dempsey took advantage of that. He stomped the steps. He went after the injury with submission holds inside the ring. Heights was finally locked in like a modified STF around the neck. That led Ren Sinclair to throw in the towel because he refused to submit, despite being unable to escape the hold, and Dempsey, of course, refused to release it. This was great. I loved the story they told throughout this match. The finish was super smart, protecting Heights, keeping him in NQCC, yet neither having him tap out nor take the fall. He didn't exactly lose the ability to exit on his own. As I've said, the idea of Heights being stuck in NQCC, which is just a training group in NXT, that doesn't really make any logical sense. The dude could just walk away at any time. But the storytelling with Heights has been far better than what they did with Miles Bourne, who quickly extricated himself from the group. Heights continues to show major upside. I do hope before the year is out, he is firmly competing for the North American Championship. Hank and Tank were getting pumped up for their match while Lexus King was making a bunch of random noise in the background with headphones on. The best I could tell, they were noise-canceling headphones, so he was trying to replicate what it might be like to be deaf so he can figure out how to beat Bourne. And if that's the case, if I'm reading that right, it's honestly incredible and super funny. I hope they lean into that even further. He left. Javon Evans entered to motivate them, only to get his ass squashed into a garage door by a charging Jasper Troy. Jasper later attacked Javon in the training room just for good measure. Then he stormed out to the ring, demanding to be added to the title match at Great American Bash. Evans followed him out for a brawl that he largely won, and he had a tope con hero to end it. It's kind of strange how Javon has been like relegated to like these backstage roles of late. I realize not everyone can be featured at the same time. It seems like way too much of a step back for him. Hopefully he wins this short feud against Troy. He gets elevated again because he really should be in the forefront of the men's division, even if he can't exactly challenge Oba Femi again anytime soon. They probably should save that for Stand and Deliver next WrestleMania weekend, which of course is like 9 months away still. Tatum Paxley was welcomed to the calling, saying she felt right at home in their like lair, which was basically a black room with a single light. Very funny. Nico Vance got hyped about the tag team championship match with Sean Spears, calming them down, saying they need to be completely focused on their goals and their 2 title opportunities. Paxley was excited for her friends to all have gold, matching the colors of their hearts. I said before that I didn't necessarily want Tatum in the culling, but given this is getting her on TV regularly and seemingly it's something that NXT is pushing hard, it's been a net positive to this point. This followed the plot from last week that it did not totally seem like Culling was putting on for Paxley, but actually they valued her being part of their faction. She also adds a lot of needed energy and personality. She's a great juxtaposition from the other three, and that is why this has worked so well. So the tag team championships were on the line, Hank and Tank defending against the Culling. The ladies distracted Hank ringside, allowing Vance to pounce his ass fully over the announce table and into Booker T, who took a big bump. Hank basically laid himself out with a huge tope con hero, but he respawned in time to break up a potential finish. Tatum distracted late. That allowed Izzy to boot Tank and Spears to hit the Impaler DDT for a false finish. Zaruka came out, they beat up Dame, and then they again carried Paxley backstage for her own good. The champions took advantage of the distraction. Spears saved Vance, only to eat the finishing sequence to get their title retention. Hank got busted open hard way around his eye. That looked gnarly. Excuse me, not Hank. Tank got busted open hard way. This definitely over-delivered. I may not love Hank and Tank as champions, but the crowd is all the way in with them. There were some nice near falls. Ultimately, getting the win was another retention notch on their belt. It would have been unfortunate for them to simply be transitional champions after beating Fraxium. So I'm glad they're getting a full-on push, at least until a better set of champions steps up. Extremely solid, B-level match here. There was a full family sit-down with Tony D'Angelo, Luca Crucifino, Stax, and a returning Adriana Rizzo, who put the entire thing together, refusing to stay in hiding. She recalled all the good times, blaming D'Angelo and Stax for destroying all of it. Rizzo said trust being broken meant that this had to end, and she did what she needed to do by booking them in a triple threat that will serve as the final battle for the family. Stax said he was being set up. D'Angelo and Crucifino agreed that Stax was a rat who broke the family apart. Crucifino said the only way he can succeed is to get away from both of them. And then they all just kind of stood up angry and I guess walked away. This was ridiculous. I'm sorry. Rizzo just returning after all that time away, a sit down that accomplished nothing with a message that could have been sent via text. D'Angelo acting an ass, Stax acting like a victim despite obviously being the entire catalyst for the family splitting, Crucifino trying to act at all. The one entertaining part was Rizzo recounting the good times, basically all the whacking and disappearing of people. Last week, I believe I said this was a step in the right direction to a degree. This was a step backwards. I cannot wait for it to be over. All three guys need to move on and completely change their gimmicks after this. The split's been a failure, and if they keep these roles, they're all DOA. This has been one of the worst faction dissolutions I can remember in WWE. Dark State got their third straight promo package with footage shown of them attacking Matt Cardona in TNA last Thursday. Dion Lennox and Saquon Sugars opened it, saying no one is safe in any promotion. Osiris Griffin was okay, but Cutler James was again terrible, and he was the one who explained that they laid out Hank and Tank with the steel chairs a couple weeks ago. His presence alone drags Dark State down, but allowing him to speak is literal insanity by the segment producers at this point. Just put the entire lift of the promos on the shoulders of Lennox and Sugars. I said this last week. Make them a tag team, strap them up with the titles, and get on with this. It's really not that hard to figure out. As far as what they said, okay, fine. It didn't move me at all. My buddy had a different contention about Cutler. He said he's not an accountant, like I've been saying. He's an undercover cop that's infiltrated this group. That would actually be an incredible twist, but there's no way that's his role. He's just completely out of place with the other three guys, and really Griffin's out of place with Lennox and Sugars who are just far better in every single way. And lastly, from TV, Cale Dixon was freaking out in the training room because he was nervous, sick, and unwilling to wrestle his scheduled match. Andre Chase wasn't having it at first. He ultimately relented, saying that they would regroup and wrestle another night. I just do not get what they're doing here. And I really don't have any time to waste getting deeper into it this week. We spent plenty of time talking about Chase U the last 2 weeks. So that brings us to our NXT Great American Bash Ultimate Preview. We're going to break down every single match and segment that's going to be on the card. Again, offer picks and predictions. And at the end, I'll give you a pre-show expectation grade. Now, this is a 5-match card plus a segment. That's going to be a TNA Championship contract signing with Williams, Hendry, and Santana. There's no telling what that's going to be, and therefore really no way to predict what's going to happen. But the match will happen at TNA Slammiversary the following weekend at the UBS Arena in New York. So, it is prominent, and I see people poo-pooing the fact that there's going to be a contract signing on this show. We've seen this before in NXT. We've seen it on main roster WWE. AEW has done contract signings on their pay-per-views, so I don't understand why it's such a big deal. I actually think it's pretty cool that they're doing it for a different promotion during Great American Bash. Let's get to the 5 matches. We have Javon Evans against Jasper Troy. We already discussed the build for it. Troy just lost to Yoshiki Inamura, so he should be losing to Javon Evans as well. Again, I said this, when Jasper came in and seemingly took Obafemi to the limit, it seemed like a step too far, because how do you take the guy down from that kind of high? Losing to Yoshi the way he did, squeaky clean, I guess that's how you just say, okay, he's not ready yet. And he needs to lose to Evans here as well. Javon has to get platformed again back to the, near top of this men's division. So I do have Javon beating Jasper. North American Championship, Sol Ruka defending against Izzy Dame. Unless something is happening where Sol and Zarya are getting called up to the main roster as a women's tag team, which I just do not think is going to happen, I don't see a reason for Ruka to drop the title here. Yeah, you could get some Paxley involvement. That would make sense of it. But you have Zarya on the other side. Really, Sol hasn't done enough with the North American title yet. She's not in the ring cutting promos herself, standing out as an individual character. You need to do that with her before you take the strap off of her. Izzy would be a fine champion, and it would make total sense in kayfabe for them to do it. I just don't see them going in that direction, so I have Sol retaining her title here. Men's North American Championship, Ethan Page defending against Ricky Saints. This was billed a Falls Count Anywhere match by Saints. Much better stipulation than Last Man Standing, and a pretty cool throwback to do this match in a theater. We've seen some other Falls Count Anywhere matches in theaters before. This is the first Falls Count Anywhere match for WWE in nearly 2 years. I think the last one was Ricochet and Shinsuke Nakamura. In that time, a 2-year period, there have been 6 Last Man Standing matches. There's a monster and a women's match, but again, 6 matches with that stipulation. And that perfectly articulates how one stipulation is overused and the other is underutilized. I've been a fan of Page's second run with the North American title here. He's done a great job, and the feud with Saints has been awesome, especially their prior match where the title changed on television. I'm not entirely sure still why they made the change, and I also don't know what's happening with Saints. Like, is he due for a main roster call-up? Is he only supposed to be there for 6 months? Is he not going to get called up until after Stand and Deliver WrestleMania weekend next year? Is he going to maybe debut in the Royal Rumble for the main roster? I'm not totally sure. But the way they took the title off of him was so unceremonious that it makes sense to me for them to flip it back on him here. The only reason that might not happen is Page has backing with Vanity Project, and Saints has nobody. So maybe he rallies some baby faces from backstage. I don't exactly know how he can win when he's up against that much adversity, but unless you're going to elevate him to either the main roster or the main event scene against Obafemi, and if you do that, that's a match that he would have to win. He'd have to take the NXT title. Then I think you need him to win back the North American Championship here. So I have Saints as the champion coming out of Great American Bash. Now, we mentioned the involvement of Jordan Grace and Blake Monroe in a tag team match against JC Jane and Fallon Henley. So let's discuss that now. There was a segment building this from NXT. Blake rang up Jordan while she was training, inviting her to a glamour workout. It reminded of like a teen movie makeover scene from the 90s almost. Monroe begged Grace to give it a shot. They did a whole spa thing. Jordan ripped the sleeves off a robe, which I thought was hysterical. Blake called her my muscle muffin and said that self-esteem is also something you need to lift, which was a pretty smart line given what Grace is all about. I know some get turned off by the campy NXT segments. This one was fun. You got the sense that Monroe might be buttering Grace up to get on her good side for one reason or another. Seemed to be some nefarious intentions. Maybe I'm just reading into it given our expectations of Mariah May from back in the day. I don't know that the result of this match matters that much. You'll remember that we said earlier in the show, the booking that would make a lot of sense was Jordan and Blake winning here, then Jordan winning the title at Evolution, Blake coming out to celebrate with her, turning heel, and then you have a mega feud for NXT. But they don't necessarily need to win the match for that to happen. Blake could get pinned somehow by a combination of JC and Fallon because Jordan gets taken out outside and she's unable to help her. That's the reason she gets angry. Then Jordan goes on and wins the title anyway, and Monroe turns on her because of that, because of what happened at Great American Bash. I'm not entirely sure the way this is going to go, but I'm going to go with Jordan and Blake winning. I would just be surprised if Monroe's debut match in WWE is her losing, be it in a tag team situation or not. And Fallon's here. She's not the champion. She can take the fall. And that brings us to what I guess is the main event of Great American Bash. I really have struggled to figure out what it's going to be. Oba Femi defending the NXT title against Yoshiki Inamura. The Great Muta, now Michi Marufuji, Io Sky, and others from Pro Wrestling Noah all sent in well wishes for a video package to motivate Inamura ahead of this title match. He later confronted Femi in the ring, saying he's already beaten Williams and Troy, so while Femi may be his greatest challenge, he's ready to make all of his supporters proud. Oba said it was great that Yoshi had so many friends because they could pick up the pieces when he gets flattened. He questioned whether Yosh will be able to lose with honor because he's simply not worthy. Josh Briggs took the mic and got booed immediately for some reason that I simply could not understand. Briggs pointed out that Inamura beat Troy easier than Femi did, that's true, and that he'd beat his ass at the bash. He also promised to do what was necessary to ensure Yoshi wins, and then it devolved into a brawl. Inamura body slammed Femi while wearing a suit, mind you, and Briggs was proud of him after that. The booing of Briggs, again, it just made zero sense. No idea what that was about. It seemed to me like one of those situations where the NXT audience wanted to get themselves over rather than what was actually happening in the ring. The segment was otherwise strong. Love the way Inamura has been booked. He did not become number one contender by happenstance. He fully earned it, and he's not backing down from Oba despite being a significant underdog in the match. It does feel like the booking here is going to result in Briggs turning on Inamura after he loses to Femi, justifying the boos in retrospect. But this match between them should be an absolute
banger.
I presume this is going to main event the show just because it's the NXT title and the women's strap is not being defended at Great American Bash. But it's probably the weakest main event match that NXT has put on for a premium live event, like in my memory. And really, the card in totality is incredibly weak. I'm glad both of the mid-card championships are on the line. That's usually positive. The tag team championships did not need to be up for grabs. That's fine too. But this being your men's title match and then not having the NXT Women's Championship on the card, it really does pale in comparison to most other NXT PLEs and back in the day, NXT takeovers as well. So I'm extremely curious to see the way this is going to completely unfold. Because of that, going in, I really do not have high expectations for Great American Bash. My grade coming in is going to be an 86 out of 100, a B. I definitely think it can overdeliver. It can easily get into B+ territory. A- probably going to be pretty difficult. But to me, this is just something WWE is putting on to go head-to-head with AEW All In. It would have been nice if it had further build. If they did this SummerSlam weekend as an NXT show, maybe Saturday afternoon before night one. I think with more time, the ability to develop some, greater challengers, having the women's title on the show, it would have been a lot better off. But am I excited to watch it at some point on Saturday, whenever time allows? I absolutely am. So that wraps up our NXT coverage and your NXT Great American Bash Ultimate Preview. I will remind that we will have pre and post show polls out for all 4 events this weekend: AEW All In, NXT Great American Bash, WWE Saturday Night's Main Event, and WWE Evolution. All of them on our social media account, Twitter specifically, at Getting Overcast. It's the only place we can do polls right now. Make sure you follow us there. Make sure you follow us on Blue Sky as well, at Getting Over. You'll get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, and all of that good stuff. As I said, episode drops. You'll find out every single time we publish one of those episodes this weekend. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. We will most likely save those for next week as we take second looks at all of these programs and then also talk WWE, NXT, and AEW as we normally do. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Full-length audio episodes, full-length video interviews. Please remember,
It's all about the five.
it is indeed right here at Getting Over. So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. A quick reminder of the schedule still to come and the shows we've already done in the podcast feed. A full WWE review from the past week, along with your WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Ultimate Preview. Thursday, we'll be back with your AEW All-In Ultimate Preview. Saturday, early evening, AEW All-In Instant Analysis. Later in the night, NXT Great American Bash and WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Instant Analysis. And of course, Sunday, your WWE Evolution Instant Analysis. We're only 1/3 of the way through our 6 episodes in as many days right here on Getting Over. That means it is time for the Silver King to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.